Now I will show you how to remove the strut from the vehicle, the front end. This is the front driver's side, 2000 Mazda 626. It's pretty simple. You take your brake line clip off. You actually just unbolt, remove these two bolts while supporting the rotor with a jack or a jack stand so that the rotor and caliper assembly do not fall. And then you loosen the 4 nuts at the top. The last time I did this, this would not drop straight down. I actually had to drop it this way, flip it, and turn it over and bring it out top first. One thing to be sure you do is to mark your mount in relationship to the body. Here I've done a poor job, but I did it in paint so that I have clear indication of which direction it needs to go. These nuts and the bolt head are both 17 millimeter. These nuts here are 14 millimeter. Some replacement nuts, if you get them, turn out to be 15 millimeter. I have removed the 4 mounting nuts on the strut. I have removed the bottom bolt from the steering knuckle strut and strut. I'll remove this bolt. Generally you have to force it out because there's pressure from the strut sitting on it a little bit. Shouldn't hurt it, shouldn't damage the threads any. Once you do that, this will drop down and then you'll take it out. As you're pulling this bolt out, support your strut a little bit, maybe by putting one of the nuts back on to keep it from completely falling down. I think I will do that. I have the strut out. As you can see, it's pretty crusty. This is an original strut, 350,000 plus miles on it. To replace the strut, you need to compress this spring enough to where it becomes loose. And then you can remove the holding nut and the centering piece, and the strut will just slide out. To compress your spring, you can get a tool from your local auto parts store, a McPherson spring strut compressor, and it's pretty simple to use. It helps if you have an impact gun. If not, you need a pretty good size 1/2-inch drive with a 19 millimeter socket. You want the spring compressors to be opposite of each other as close as possible. What you'll do is go counterclockwise on the bolt heads and it will compress the spring enough to loosen it up in the assembly. One thing that is common is when you're tightening this up, it slides along the spring. If that happens, you need to loosen it up and start over again. You do not want to keep compressing the spring, because what could happen is this could slide enough to where it could actually come off if it's sliding this way while you're trying to tighten it up. I have a cordless impact, and it works pretty well as long as you have a good I have the spring compressed. As you can see, it's loose in the assembly. The next thing to do is to take this nut off. It's a 21mm nut. Most replacement nuts are 22mm. As you can see, I still have the alignment indicator on the mount. There is a plastic gasket here. You don't need to take this off at all. There is a rubber gasket right here that you will need to make sure you put back in place on the new strut. This is the strut assembly disassembled. This is your strut. As I mentioned, you have a rubber gasket that goes in the bottom of the strut. You have the bellows. The big end goes towards the top of the bellow, like so. The small end goes to the bottom of the strut. You have the mount, and then you also have the centering piece that keeps the shaft centered in the mount. Now all I have to do is replace this and reassemble. I will demonstrate the difference between a new strut and a used strut. This is the one I pulled out of the car with 360,000 miles on it. This is the new strut. This car should handle much better with new struts. And now we have the new strut in place. The gasket is on. You need to make sure that the spring and the gasket meet here. The new retainer nut is tightened down. After you put it into the car, you can hit this nut one more time just to make sure it's fully tight. Now all you have to do is reinstall the strut. I've got the new strut started to be mounted. I've put it up into the body. My alignment marks line up. I've hand snugged the nuts. Now the issue is this is not pointing straight. You can actually turn this by hand so that it is pointing straight, and then you can reseat your steering knuckle. Put your bolts in, make sure they're tight, put on the brake line clip, then you're ready to roll.